G'day, my name's Graham. I'm just your average thick Yorkshire lad, so anyone don't have to take this too seriously, but it's about the EU, which we ought to take with a pinch of salt, because the people in Brussels, the committee, the gang, the bureaucrats, whatever they are, the unelected now dictators of Europe, strange that, isn't it? They had a democracy at one time. All those lovely places had a democracy, and now it's been destroyed because, well, the bureaucrats can't stand and don't have the patience with the ordinary average person to allow them to make up their own mind. They've got to have the mind made up for them. And isn't it funny that these people who rave on about equality, like in the BBC, all these people raving on about equality, you must make sacrifices like Macron. Make sacrifices for the climate. All of you people with no money and no jobs and very little employment, you have to, in living in the countryside where it's all over the world, it's like that, and it's going to get worse. So they're going to make it more expensive for them to live by putting a tax on carbon or a climate tax, whatever, saying all of you must make a sacrifice for who are we making a sacrifice for? You see, what it is a lack of leadership. That is why the EU basically is collapsing as an idea, because there is no leadership. There's bosses and dictators, but dictators are not leaders. Leaders are those people who people naturally follow because they've got something to offer that's of benefit to them, not something that takes away the benefits of living in a European state from them. Now, in that respect, in that regard, as far as leadership is concerned, have we not noticed that in the world today, in the Western world in particular, we no longer get leaders? Nigel Farage is an exception, and so is possibly Donald Trump. It depends on, and never mind, people are castigating these people. Nonetheless, they're not bowing and scraping to wherever you're supposed to bow and scrape to these days to get a position in the bureaucracies of the governments and as member of parliament mostly these days. So leaders in the past, as we know, they went into battles. They actually risked their lives and sacrificed their lives in front of their troops in the battles. Where they stood for something. They stood for their crown, and they stood for what they thought was their right to rule that kingdom. They didn't say, go on lads, go and sacrifice yourselves, go on, we don't care how many of you die for us, the leaders, as we'll sit back in our really plush residences, away from all the melee that we're causing, because we don't know how to rule. Not much at all, really. They know how to make money for themselves, they've got ideas what say we can control the people, where this political correctness is a program codex, which they're sort of implanting into the young people's heads to sort of progressively negate their ability for self-will, if you like, and that is a program. Anyway, that's a different matter, but also it's of the same essence, if you like, of what's actually going on, and why these people in the EU and Western politicians all over the world and corporate leaders are now starting to get rather on the nose, because there's no leader. The word leader, it's the word leader that sort of lets them all down, because there are no leaders amongst these bureaucrats in the EU. They're not even that clever. They can come up with smart-ass remarks like they said to Nigel Farage, oh, you're British democracy. Well, in other words, they're this insulting put down, which they think they're really clever, because they're into punitive revenge and retribution, and we won't forgive you, we're never going to forgive you for wanting to get out of the EU, we're going to hate you and make your lives miserable forever, which just shows you at the heart and soul of these people, they're extremely dangerous people. These people who are forever into eternal punishment of those that will not bow and scrape and go obediently to the slaughter that they demand you should, sacrifice your countries to Africa. Why? What's that all about? When, in fact, you don't, as I've repeated in another video, well, there's no need to increase the population of Europe one, if you're trying to reduce CO2 but you're increasing your population, defeating your purpose. Second, well, robots and AI, it needs to be emphasised, robots and AI are going to take away a lot of jobs anyway. If there's a shortage of labour, how come there's so many unemployed youth were residents or born there? How come there are so many of those are already unemployed? Why bring in more unemployed people, or unemployable people in this case? What's the point? Actually, what it is there are what the EU have done is take away a country's ability to lead itself out of problems. It's tying everyone in knots, in contract knots, which really, when one examines I don't know how the EU was established as an anti-democratic forum, or whatever it is, anti-democratic, bureaucratic-led, self-selecting committee of super elite who talk about equality, but are so above everyone else in their way, in their castles, and in their fabulous residences they have. They are no longer part of the society themselves. They're not part of the European society. The elite that lives above human society as a whole. So they call about equality when they treat the rest of the society as basically as rubbish. You don't count. Macron, you see them ranting and raving about why no people won't all obey some bloody whoever he was with glasses on, another Hitler on the way if he wants to be, because why doesn't everyone just obey the European Union's bureaucrats? Why? Well, we are all actually equal. These people don't realise it. They don't realise they're equal to the bloke on the street. They're equal to the tramp. They're equal to anyone. You can't say we're all equal and yet you can then demand other people obey you. You have ideas that take off because they're progressively practical, positive, and they're pragmatic towards the people, or people, and then if they're not that way, eventually after a little while people work on this, the ideas or the policies are just rubbish and they're regressive. They're progressively regressive, irresponsible, and they're stuck rigid, not pragmatic. In other words, it's an anti-evolutionary. It's trying to devolve society into some sort of serfdom, like it wants to go back to the 18th century before Napoleon began dismantling all the French Revolution and stuff like that, what began the sort of journey France had to a democracy. So they want to go back. They want to actually go further back in time, like to 1394, when corporations run Europe between them, little fiefdoms between themselves, and then end up having squabbles and wars between themselves for years. And where's it going, all this anti-human ideology that the EU bureaucrats must have sworn an oath to keep, but they're willing to sacrifice the immunity and the country's identity for some bizarre idea that all people must actually think and act exactly the same as they're told to act. You obey or what? We've had this before, not long ago, 8 years ago in Europe. There was another man called Hitler, and he come up and he was basically a bunch of bureaucrats called the SS, and they just, well, if you obeyed or what, we got very, very angry with you. What's next in this EU? If the people do not protest very peacefully, protesting violently is a really ridiculously stupid thing, because that may be planned. That may be planned. Where are the next concentration camps going to come in Europe, and who will be in there, is the question that people in Europe need to ask now, because the people who did it not that long ago may yet do it again. We don't know. I wouldn't trust these people as far as you could throw them. They're totally untrustworthy. What they've done to Britain, and this is the important thing, I think that the riots have been triggered off in France and Belgium because the way the EU is treating the British people, who are generally decent people, And the people of France know that. People of Brussels, they know the British people are generally decent, honest, hard-working people. Yet, and they love their democracy and freedom. And that's what I think the attack on Britain by the EU is triggering, is making, is scaring the daylights of all the people in Europe and saying, God heavens, if they can treat Britain like that, the leaders of the free world are the British, whether they like the Germans and like whoever's in this EU like to admit it or not, the leaders of the free world, in some ways, the initiators of knowledge and freedom and philosophy and science, all that spread all over Europe, is in the island. And now we've got these technocrats and bureaucrats attacking it because it wants it, because the people voted. They didn't want them anymore, and I think that's triggering these riots in Europe. They don't realise. In other words, I don't know what they do in their committees, I don't know what they're thinking about, but obviously it's only of themselves and not human beings in England and France and Italy or Greece or wherever they are. We're all different people. And they have different ways of being. They can't all be Germans, bureaucrats, whatever that is. They can't all be public servants and bureaucrats of the elite. Not everyone can be like that. Because that would be what? Cloning or something. So maybe the elite are all sort of clones. You think about it? Equal. What's it mean? Maybe these elite are not real people, they're robots maybe. Never thought about that before. Maybe the Brussels bureaucrats are just robots. Because I think like robots. Obey! It's like Doctor Who, the Daleks. That's what it is. It's like Doctor Who and the Daleks. That's what it's like, a science fiction movie unfolding in our face. These people are triggering the riots in Europe by attacking Britain. And it's offensive. What on earth do they think they are? These dictators think they are. Protest peacefully. Protest peacefully. And human society can sort this out. We can invent our way out of anything. These people are destroying the idea of invention itself. They don't want you to think. They want you just to obey.